You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Those words were written nearly 2,000 years ago by a man who ruled the most powerful empire on earth, a man who commanded millions of soldiers, controlled vast wealth, and could have surrendered to every pleasure and temptation imaginable. He chose instead to wake before dawn and write in a private journal that was never meant to be read. He chose duty over desire, discipline over indulgence, reflection over reaction. How did Marcus Aurelius hold an empire together, survive endless war, outlast plague, and still become one of the greatest philosophical minds in human history? Was it pure willpower, divine luck, or was something deeper coded into the very fabric of who he was? Today, we are going to look at his life through a framework he never knew existed. And what we find will change the way you see not only him, but yourself. Human design is a system that synthesizes ancient wisdom with modern science, specifically quantum physics. It maps out your unique energetic blueprint based on the exact moment and location of your birth. Think of it as a cosmic instruction manual for how your energy works, how you make decisions, and what you are here to contribute. Now, Marcus Aurelius was born on April 26, 121 AD in Rome, Italy. Because no birth time survives in the historical record, we are working with a noon chart, which is standard practice for historical figures. This means our reading focuses on what we can know with certainty: his type, his probable authority, and the powerful archetypal forces at play in his design. Based on this data, Marcus Aurelius appears as a manifesting generator, possibly with splenic authority. This is one of the most dynamic and complex designs in the system, a being built for sustained, responsive action with an inner body intelligence that knows truth in a flash, in the moment, before the mind has a chance to overthink it. And when you look at his life, that blueprint is everywhere. Marcus Aurelius's father, Marcus Annius Verus, was born into the Roman aristocracy. His family was wealthy, politically connected, and deeply respected. Aurelius's father died when he was only 3 years old, and he was raised primarily by his paternal grandfather, a man of serious character who valued education and moral discipline above all else. From the very beginning, Marcus was surrounded by Stoic philosophy. His grandfather hired him the finest tutors in Rome. By the time he was a teenager, Marcus had already fallen in love with learning. He gave up fine clothing, he slept on a hard mat, he was practicing asceticism before most Roman boys his age had any philosophical interests at all. Now, from a human design perspective, this is fascinating. Manifesting generators have what is called a defined sacral center. This is the motor of life force energy. They are built to work, to respond, to dive deep into what genuinely lights them up. And Marcus, almost from birth, found what lit him up: philosophy, discipline, writing, and the pursuit of truth. But manifesting generators also carry a deep tension. They can initiate like a manifestor, but they must first respond from within, or they exhaust themselves and others. They can also struggle with what human design calls the not self theme of frustration, the sense that despite all their effort, something feels incomplete or misaligned. In his early years, Marcus was being conditioned hard by the world around him. The Roman Empire in the 2nd century was a theater of politics, performance, and power. Everyone wanted a piece of the young aristocrat being groomed for greatness. His open and undefined centers would have absorbed enormous pressure from his environment, particularly around identity and ego. And there is something else to note. Around this time in his early teens, Marcus would have been moving through the early influence of his CHIRON placement, the wounded healer archetype. For Marcus, this early CHIRON wound appears connected to themes of duty versus personal truth. The world was already telling him who he needed to be. His design was quietly whispering something different. When Marcus was around 17 years old, something extraordinary happened. The Emperor Hadrian, one of Rome's most powerful rulers, took notice of him. Hadrian, who had no biological heir, began engineering a succession plan. He adopted a man named Antoninus Pius on one condition: that Antoninus would in turn adopt young Marcus. Just like that, Marcus went from promising aristocrat to future emperor of Rome. And here is where his manifesting generator design begins to show its teeth. Most people in that position would have leaned in hard, grasping for influence and visibility. Marcus did the opposite. He continued studying, he continued writing. He was responding to what felt true, not initiating out of ambition. He told his mentor and tutor Fronto in letters that he genuinely preferred his books to the palace. That is splenic authority at work, a quiet, present moment knowing that says, "This is right, even if I cannot explain why." Marcus trusted his gut over the noise of Rome's political theater. He also had what appears to be significant definition in gates and channels associated with logic and pattern recognition in his design. He could see systems, he could see how things fit together. This made him deeply effective as an administrator long before he ever sat on the throne. The first Saturn return occurs at around ages 28 to 30, which was approximately 149 to 151 AD for Marcus. Around the age of 28 to 30, every human being experiences their first Saturn return. Saturn, the planet of structure, karma, and mastery, completes its first full orbit and returns to the position it occupied at birth. For most people, this period brings a restructuring of identity. Old patterns fall away. Real responsibility arrives. For Marcus, the Saturn return landed right in the middle of Antoninus's rule. He was being asked to shoulder more and more of the actual work of empire. His adopted father was aging, the weight was shifting, and in his private writings from this period, we see something profound. A young man wrestling deeply with the question of how to live rightly in a world that rewards the opposite. He wrote about ambition as a form of slavery. He wrote about the fleeting nature of fame. His manifesting generator energy was not burning out, chasing power. It was responding to what genuinely called to him service, justice, and self-mastery, becoming emperor. The year is 161 AD. Marcus is 39. When Antoninus died in 161 AD, Marcus became emperor. He immediately insisted on sharing the throne with his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, a move that surprised almost everyone. He had every legal right to rule alone, but this decision carries the fingerprints of his design. Manifesting generators thrive with co-creators. They are not built to be isolated autocrats. They are built to work in dynamic relationship with others, responding and informing, moving quickly when needed, and pulling back when the energy calls for it. Then, almost immediately, the empire was hit from multiple directions. War broke out on the eastern and northern frontiers simultaneously. Then came the Antonine Plague, a devastating pandemic that killed millions across the empire over the following decades. Marcus did not retreat into the palace. He went to the front lines. He commanded campaigns himself. He lived in military tents. He wrote his meditations not in a comfortable study, but in military encampments on the Danube frontier. This is the manifesting generator in full expression, sustained, committed, responsive action in the face of enormous challenge. Not because someone told them to, but because the inner intelligence said, this is what the moment requires. The Uranus opposition occurs around age 42, which was approximately 163 AD. Around age 42, every person faces what is called the Uranus opposition. Uranus, the planet of awakening, rebellion, and radical change, sits directly across the sky from where it was at birth. This transit often triggers a midlife reckoning, a confrontation with authenticity. Who have you truly become? What still needs to change? For Marcus, this period aligned with some of the most intense pressure of his reign. The plague was at its height. Military crises were compounding. His co-emperor, Lucius Verus, died suddenly in 169 AD, leaving Marcus as sole ruler. And yet, the meditations that survive from this era are among the most luminous pieces of philosophy ever written. He wrote about impermanence, about the smallness of one's reputation against the scale of time, about the only thing worth mastering being the quality of one's own attention. His Uranus opposition did not break him, it clarified him. In human design terms, he appears to have leaned fully into what is called inner authority during this period, trusting the body's knowing over the mind's fear, acting from design rather than conditioning. This is what the system would call moving from not self into alignment. The Chiron return occurs around ages 49 to 51, which was approximately 170 to 172 AD. Between the Uranus opposition and the second Saturn return comes one of the most underrated passages in a human life, the Chiron return. Chiron is the wounded healer of the solar system. It takes roughly 50 years to complete one full orbit. When it returns to its birth position, around ages 49 to 51, it asks a profound question. Have you made peace with your deepest wound? Have you stopped hiding it, stopped fighting it, and started using it as the source of your greatest gift? For Marcus, this passage arrived in one of the darkest stretches of his reign. The Antonine Plague was still grinding through the empire. His trusted co-emperor and adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, had died. Marcus was now sole ruler, carrying the full weight of Rome on his shoulders, while simultaneously grieving multiple children who had not survived childhood. He and his wife, Faustina, had lost several of their sons. The private toll was immense. And yet this is precisely the period from which some of his most piercing philosophical writing survives. He wrote about loss without bitterness. He wrote about grief without collapse. He wrote about the body's suffering as something the mind need not be enslaved to. He was not writing from a place of having arrived somewhere comfortable. He was writing from the wound itself and transmuting it in real time into wisdom. This is the Chiron return, doing exactly what it is designed to do. In human design, we speak about defined and undefined centers as places where we either radiate consistent energy or absorb and amplify the energy of the world around us. The undefined centers are where our greatest conditioning happens, but also where our greatest wisdom can ultimately emerge once we stop trying to fix what was never broken in the first place. Marcus Aurelius spent 50 years being wounded by the gap between the world as it was and the world as he believed it should be. The Chiron return did not close that gap. It taught him to stop needing it closed. That shift from resistance to acceptance, from wound to wisdom, is written into almost every page of the meditations. And it is no coincidence that the most luminous of those pages appear to come from this exact window of his life. Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD at the age of 58 on campaign in the north, still serving, still working, still writing. He never stopped. He never checked out. The Meditations, his private journal, was never intended for publication. It was a daily practice of self-recalibration. He was not writing for posterity. He was writing to stay in alignment with his own design. And that is perhaps the most powerful thing about his legacy. He was not performing virtue. He was not curating a public image. He was doing the private, unglamorous, relentless work of a person trying to live in accordance with what was deepest and truest in them. This is what we call quantum sovereignty. It is the recognition that when you stop trying to be what the world expects and start responding from your authentic, energetic blueprint, you stop leaking energy. You stop the cycle of frustration, bitterness, anger, or disappointment that comes from living out of alignment. You begin to architect your reality from the inside out. Marcus Aurelius had no human design chart. He had no framework for centers or gates or channels, but he had a philosophy that pointed to exactly the same truth. He called it living according to nature. Human design calls it living your design. The result was the same: a life of extraordinary impact, authentic contribution, and an inner peace that no amount of external chaos could fully extinguish. His second Saturn return, around ages 58 to 60, was essentially his final passage. The system of mastery and structure he had spent his life building was complete. He died in service, in alignment, in character. Rome remembered him as Optimus Princeps, the best of emperors. History remembered him as a philosopher king. And now, nearly 2,000 years later, millions of people around the world still read his private journal and feel seen by it. That is the power of a life lived in design. Let's bring this home. Marcus Aurelius, manifesting generator with probable splenic authority, spent his entire life unknowingly demonstrating what it looks like to trust your inner knowing, to respond rather than force, and commit fully to what your energy genuinely calls you toward. He had an open ego center, which meant he had nothing to prove and everything to offer. He had deep logical definition that let him see patterns others missed. He had a warrior's energy in his design, exalted and channeled into something greater than conquest. He had the philosopher's capacity for solitude and reflection built right into who he was. He did not succeed despite his introspective, quiet nature. He succeeded because of it. And here is the lesson that crosses 2,000 years directly into your life today. You have a design too. You have a type, an authority, defined and undefined centers that explain why certain environments exhaust you while others light you up. Why some decisions feel immediately right in your body, while others keep you in your head for days. Why you sometimes feel like you are forcing your way through life, and other times feel like everything flows. Marcus Aurelius did not have access to this map. He had to discover his truth through decades of trial, philosophy, grief, and war. You do not have to do it that way. What if you could see your blueprint clearly right now and start making decisions from that place of genuine inner authority? That is not a small thing. That is the beginning of your own quantum sovereignty. If Marcus Aurelius's story has stirred something in you today, if there is a part of you wondering what your own energetic design looks like and what it might unlock, we want to help you take that first step. Take our free clarity quiz in the link below. It takes just a few minutes and it will begin to show you the outline of your own unique blueprint. No birth time required to start. Just curiosity and a willingness to see yourself more clearly. because the world does not need more people performing who they think they should be. It needs more people doing exactly what Marcus did, waking up, looking inward, and choosing to live from the truth of who they actually are. If you found this video meaningful, please share it with someone who is on their own journey of self-discovery. If you'd like, you can subscribe for more deep dives into history's most extraordinary figures through the lens of human design and inner authority. And now remember the words Marcus left for us. They were written by firelight on the edge of an empire in a journal he never planned to share. Confine yourself to the present. The present is where your design lives. We will see you in the next one.